Before I start this video, first I would like for you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Second, I would like to say some names before I start this video before I forget. First one is Lawrence O'Donnell, Rachel Maddow, Pussy Riot. This is a this is a Russian punk rock band. Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, Romanovs family, French Revolution. The purpose of this video is to show you how history might repeat itself. And number two, most Americans were warned of what to come of Donald Trump. Third, don't be surprised when things happen. Although this video I think is mostly for royalists, I guess normal people as well, but I think it's for everyone. If you were not paying attention back then, COVID-19 should make you pay attention now, because you are at home doing probably nothing or learning new things, unless if you're not already dead by the pandemic. Sorry to say that. Okay, how will I start this video? Lawrence O'Donnell and Rachel Maddow are two American journalists who host their own TV shows. The reason I mention both in this video, although my point might come from one of them or maybe both, I'm not sure, but it's some videos I saw back then. It's because one of them, like I said, or both, had interviewed a Russian musician called I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name. Here's a picture of her and her name. In the interview, she gave most American viewers of what Russia was about. I consider her interview as a warning of what to come. She and her band members have more balls than majority of men exist. So here's the clip of her interview, and I will also leave a link in the description.
The group Pussy Riot burst onto the world stage 5 years ago when they performed the anti-Putin protest song Punk Prayer at a Moscow cathedral. 3 of them spent 2 years in a Russian prison for that after being convicted in a Russian court of hooliganism. Pussy Riot has seen enough of the Trump presidency to compare Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin. 8 months into the Trump presidency, founding member Nadia said this: "Democracy is being eroded by authoritarian or pro-authoritarian leaders like Putin and Donald Trump." And Nadia from Pussy Riot joins us now here in the studio. Thank you very much for doing this. It's very rare for you to be in the United States and to join us on television, so we really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So you have a unique perspective on these two men that are kind of an obsession now with the world, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Do you see the similarities?
I would like to send them both to the moon, but I'm really concerned with the way how moon will feel like.
Right.
So I wouldn't do that just because I'm compassionate to the moon. You know, they're both eroding our institutions, and our job here is to protect these institutions. I think they make us forget that citizenship is not just using things that your government is giving to you, but giving back to your government and protecting those institutions like democracy, for example. They're both hate critics. And they have the same attitude to media, which is concerning to me. And I've seen how badly it can turn. I've seen it in front of my eyes for the last 17 years. And I hear from Donald Trump the same words about media that Putin was using for 17 years. That is fake news that are paid.
Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude. No, I'm not going to give you a question. I'm not going to give you a question.
Can you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir,
go ahead.
Can you state?
And people who do have real beliefs, they are uncomfortable for Vladimir Putin, including foreign leaders. That's why he doesn't like people who really do believe in democracy and really believe in freedom of speech and human rights. Donald Trump doesn't have any real political beliefs. He's really concerned with himself, with his fame and his wealth. And that's perfectly understandable for Putin as KGB agent. He knows how to deal with people who are easy to understand or easy to bribe.
The second point I want to make is about one of American journalists I've mentioned also did a segment about Russian hotel.
To get at that one tonight, weirdly, it might help to know that there used to be an official travel agency of the Soviet Union. Early on, Joseph Stalin created an official travel agency for the USSR. It was called Intourist. If you were a foreigner and you wanted to visit the young Soviet Union, you'd have to go through Intourist, and they would manage your trip. And I do mean manage. They managed hotels all over the Soviet Union, all these Intourist hotels. And if you wanted to come visit the Soviet Union as a foreign tourist or as a foreign business traveler, you would have to stay in one of these Intourist hotels. This whole Intourist system was set up by Stalin. And everybody who worked at these, lovely, very Soviet-looking hotels, they would keep an eye on you while you were having your Russian visit. They would keep a very, very, very close eye on you. Quote, the bellboys, drivers, cooks, and maids all worked for the NKVD, which was the secret police agency later known as the KGB. Also on the payroll at these hotels were the prostitutes, who were deployed to entrap and blackmail visiting foreign politicians and businessmen. And these in-tourist hotels, they were all over the Soviet Union, and they all operated basically the same way. They'd be a normal, if somewhat terrifying and brutalist Soviet hotel experience for most visitors. But if some foreigner came through who was potentially influential in his or her home country, some decision maker who might be useful to the Soviet state at some point, well, then they would basically deploy their intelligence assets. They would deploy them to the foreigner's hotel room.
This clip must give you an idea of what probably happened to Prince Andrew, which is our current situation. Here's the segment that I'm talking about.
Started running a museum where they would show how the KGB would spy on people staying in special rooms in this hotel where potentially influential or important foreigners would be assigned to stay when they came to visit. The KGB would mount entrapment operations. They basically would set up all these foreigners to be blackmailed by the Soviet Union. Out of 400 plus rooms in this hotel in Estonia, the KGB had 60 of the rooms wired. They also had a monopoly on prostitution at the hotel. All of the prostitutes who they allowed to work at that hotel, all of them were KGB. And of course, now the KGB doesn't exist anymore. KGB became the FSB, which is 2 whole letters different than the KGB. Ultimately, the head of the FSB became this guy. And this guy got to be who he is now. This guy got to be president of Russia in a very KGB kind of way. And in the late 1990s, there was a powerful federal prosecutor who was looking into President Yeltsin, looking into other people in Yeltsin's government, looking into them for allegedly skimming off lots and lots of money into private foreign bank accounts. So this prosecutor's looking into high-level corruption in the new Russian presidency. And then, lo and behold, a grainy tape turns up that shows that federal prosecutor in a hotel bed with 2 very young-looking prostitutes. And maybe it's just a grainy tape, and who can say if that's really the prosecutor? But then the head of the FSB came out and publicly confirmed, yes, I hereby attest that is the prosecutor. That is definitely him. I'm the head of the KGB, the FSB, and I can hereby assure the public that this terrible person doing terrible things with these prostitutes in this terrible video filmed in this terrible hotel room, I can hereby tell you that is this terrible prosecutor, who incidentally has been looking into corruption by the president. And so because of that grainy tape, the prosecutor who was looking into Yeltsin lost his job. And President Yeltsin was very thankful, and he named yet another new prime minister.
The minor victims susceptible to sexual abuse. That abuse included sexualized massages during which the minor victim was fully or partially nude.
He named as his new prime minister the head of the FSB, Vladimir Putin, and that put a stop to the musical chairs at the top of the Russian government, and it's never started up again because Vladimir Putin has never given up power since.
The third point I want to make is about the Queen's husband, Prince Philip. I don't know if most of you know the history about his family. There is a lot to say about his family, but I want to focus only on the part where his family was driven out of Greece.
This was just the start of 10 traumatic years for Alice and her family. The First World War triggered a decade of conflict in Greece between pro- and anti-royalist forces. In 1922, Republican troops entered Athens. Alice's brother-in-law, the king, fled the country. But her husband, Prince Andrew, was arrested and put on trial by a revolutionary court.
Here's a clip of that, and just know whatever clip I put in this video, or if I happen to not put them due to YouTube flagging me, I usually put the link of it in the description. Here's the clip.
But the child was blissfully oblivious to the crisis engulfing his family. But there was no time for celebrations. In December 1922, Philip's father, Prince Andrew, was convicted of disloyalty by the revolutionary authorities and faced a death sentence. When Prince Andrew was granted a last-minute stay of execution, the family seized their opportunity to flee. With the baby Prince Philip stowed in an orange crate as a makeshift cot, Alice and her family boarded a British warship and sailed into a humiliating exile. Alice's life as a conventional royal princess was over.
The next thing I want to focus on is the French Revolution. If you don't know about it, which you guys should be ashamed, because you should learn about this in school or somewhere. Here's a short clip that pretty much explains it. I might be flagged on this video due to the background music. Again, if I do get flagged, I'll cut it out of the video, of this video, but I will leave the link of that video in the description. Here's the video.
Rights do people have, and where do they come from? Who gets to make decisions for others, and on what authority? And how can we organize society to meet people's needs? These questions challenged an entire nation during the upheaval of the French Revolution. By the end of the 18th century, Europe had undergone a profound intellectual and cultural shift known as the Enlightenment. Philosophers and artists promoted reason and human freedom over tradition and religion. The rise of a middle class and printed materials encouraged political awareness. And the American Revolution had turned a former English colony into an independent republic. Yet France, one of the largest and richest countries in Europe, was still governed by an ancient regime of three rigid social classes called estates. The monarch, King Louis XVI, based his authority on divine right and granted special privileges to the first and second estates, the Catholic clergy and the nobles. The third estate, middle-class merchants and craftsmen, as well as over 20 million peasants, had far less power. And they were the only ones who paid taxes, not just to the king, but to the other estates as well. In bad harvest years, taxation could leave peasants with almost nothing, while the king and nobles lived lavishly on their extracted wealth. But as France sank into debt due to its support of the American Revolution and its long-running war with England, change was needed. King Louis appointed Finance Minister Jacques Necker, who pushed for tax reforms and won public support by openly publishing the government's finances. But the king's advisors strongly opposed these initiatives. Desperate for a solution, the king called a meeting of the Estates Generales, an assembly of representatives from the three estates, for the first time in 175 years. Although the Third Estate represented 98% of the French population, its vote was equal to each of the other estates. And unsurprisingly, both of the upper classes favored keeping their privileges.
When it comes to sort of institutional and systemic racism, it's there and it stays there because someone somewhere is benefiting from it.
Realizing they couldn't get fair representation, the Third Estate broke off, declared themselves the National Assembly, and pledged to draft a new constitution, with or without the other estates. King Louis ordered the First and Second Estates to meet with the National Assembly, but he also dismissed Necker, his popular finance minister. In response, thousands of outraged Parisians joined with sympathetic soldiers to storm the Bastille prison.
Apparently, we're all supposed to clap for the NHS again on Sunday. So, we've lost more NHS staff than we lost soldiers in the Iraq War because this criminally incompetent government haven't provided PPE. When they ask for a pay rise, they're called communists, but you brain-dead SEALs will stand on your doorstep and clap.
When it comes to sort of institutional and systemic racism, it's there and it stays there because someone somewhere is benefiting from it.
Claps don't feed nurses, they don't protect them from COVID-19. The ignorance and arrogance in this country, you're going to stand there like brain-dead SEALs and clap for something that's being destroyed by the Conservatives. The NHS, nurses, doctors, everyone asked you not to vote Tory in December, and you still did it anyway, and then you'll stand there pretending to give a shit. Nurses cannot feed themselves. Claps do not feed nurses. Claps do not provide PPE.
A symbol of royal power in a large storehouse of weapons. The revolution had begun. As rebellion spread throughout the country, the feudal system was abolished. The Assembly's Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen proclaimed a radical idea for the time, that individual rights and freedoms were fundamental to human nature, and government existed only to protect them. Their privileges gone, many nobles fled abroad, begging foreign rulers to invade France and restore order. And while Louis remained as the figurehead of the constitutional monarchy, he feared for his future. In 1791, he tried to flee the country, but was caught. The attempted escape shattered people's faith in the king. The royal family was arrested, and the king charged with treason. After a trial, the once revered king was publicly beheaded, signaling the end of 1,000 years of monarchy and finalizing the September 21st declaration of the First French Republic, governed by the motto, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité. 9 months later, Queen Marie Antoinette, a foreigner long mocked as Madame Deficit for her extravagant reputation, was executed as well. But the revolution would not end there. Some leaders, not content with just changing the government, sought to completely transform French society. Its religion, its street names, even its calendar. As multiple factions formed, the extremist Jacobins, led by Maximilien Robespierre, launched a reign of terror to suppress the slightest dissent, executing over 20,000 people before the Jacobins' own downfall. Meanwhile, France found itself at war with neighboring monarchs seeking to strangle the revolution before it spread. Amidst the chaos, a general named Napoleon Bonaparte took charge, becoming emperor as he claimed to defend the revolution's democratic values. All in all, the revolution saw 3 constitutions and 5 governments within 10 years, followed by decades alternating between monarchy and revolt before the next republic formed in 1871. And while we celebrate the French Revolution's ideals, we still struggle with many of the same basic questions raised over 2 centuries ago.
Now, some of you might say, why all these clips? The reason I'm sharing my thought is because I feel like history is repeating itself. Everything I have been done not too long ago. We see people being entrapped due to different political views. We see women standing up for unfair living practices. We see loyalists taken out of their country and entrapped for whatever reason, and you know who I'm talking about. We see many things going on that should not be one bit of a surprise. I hope some of you are paying attention now. COVID-19 should make you do that. I hope you saw frames of videos and or pictures that I put when certain videos were playing. This is my way of comparing history to our current situation. The Sussexes are on the right path of history for leaving the royal family. I hope they don't go back, because it's not looking good. If history served me well, French Revolution, I wish the Brits my thoughts and prayers. Thanks for watching. Please take a moment to subscribe, like, and share.
Was convicted of disloyalty
Thank you.
by the revolutionary authorities and faced a death sentence. When Prince Andrew was granted a last-minute stay of execution, the family seized their opportunity to flee. With the baby Prince Philip stowed in an orange crate as a makeshift cot, Alice and her family boarded a British warship and sailed into a humiliating exile. Alice's life as a conventional royal princess was over.